Great God Day to you from lovely Clearwater Beach. Welcome to a brand new series that Kaylee and I are calling Making the Shift, an ode to one of the greatest teachers I've ever known, Dr. Wayne Dyer. But before we get into the shift, I want to teach basically what I'm going to call a foundational exercise that leads into it. It seems in this world that we live in, and it's a beautiful world, that we spend so much time learning, and accumulating, that we have forgotten like a really huge lesson. That's how to be happy, how to love, and that those two things are the grand prizes in life. And those two thoughts lead into today's lesson, which is going to kind of be a punchline at the end. And trust me when I tell you, I believe this will literally be the heaviest punchline in any video Kaylee and I have done yet. Now, I coach a lot of people, I coach a lot of businesses on how to reach their full potential. Because of the nature of what I do, people ask me all the time, John, if you don't mind me asking, do you believe there's a heaven? Do you believe there's a hell? And I, of course, like to answer the question with the question, well, why don't you just look around for a moment? I remember when I was young, in my vernacular, there wasn't the word stress, there wasn't the word overwhelmed, there wasn't the word defeated. There was just literally waking up with wonder and amazement until somebody taught me a really harsh lesson. That's going to be the punchline. Now, you've heard me say this before. It's a famous quote by Charles Bukowski. Hopefully it's not getting old. It's brought in very deliberately. The quote is, do you remember who you were before the world told you who you had to be? And you woke up each day with wonder and amazement, with love, with happiness, with hope, a mind that was kind of clear, really. Well, you know, I remember that myself. And I would wake up and I would save bugs out of the pool all day long. I didn't need any more than that to be happier than I could ever imagine that I would have had to be. And then, of course, we know from watching these videos back in the 70s, my best friend next door, Rachel, she died of something called Reye's syndrome. She was one of the first. And shortly either after that or before that, my grandpa Elmo died. And I was introduced to death at a very early age. But there was still great resiliency until we got back from those events. And this person in life was about to teach me something that was never have meant to have been taught. Let's just say they started taking me into the garage and showing me films that young children should have never been watching. And that was when I made the shift away from being happy and the shift away from being the pure love that I am. And here is the punchline in this lesson. In life, when we come into the world, and we're crying and we're screaming and everyone else is smiling and laughing, we don't know we're not in heaven. We don't know we're not in heaven until someone teaches us that we're not in heaven. We don't know we're not in heaven until someone teaches us that we're not in heaven. So the foundational lesson before we get into what the shift means, for the rest of your life, I want you to understand that 7.5 out of 10 people have experienced loss, trauma, or betrayal in a primary relationship. And unless they learn to transform their pain, they're going to transmit it to you and I. We've probably done some pain transmitting. But what I want each and every one of you to do, when you go into an encounter, that person's probably experienced loss, trauma, or betrayal. And like Paul Young once said, all of our hurts come from relationships. So it seems very likely that all of our healing is also going to come from our relationships. So do me a favor. For the rest of your life, when you're in an encounter with another human being, show them they're still in heaven by your happiness, by your joy, and by your love. And if you can keep that commitment each and every day, this world could turn around. But once again, we live in a world where people are consumed with learning so many things that honestly, like most of them really don't matter at the end of the day. Let's not forget there is no path to love but to be love. There is no path to happiness but to be happy. And how we get that is from bringing heaven into all of our relationships. And in closing, I promised my great friend Charlie I would ask this question to all of our viewing audience. By now you probably know I'm a believer, proudly a believer. Kaylee's proudly a believer, and it's because it was never forced. It was modeled. And I never brought her into some stuffy scenario where she didn't understand what the heck was going on. I introduced her to it by how I was. So I just ask you, do you believe that Jesus came down to earth to start a bunch of religions and a bunch of bureaucracies? Or do you really believe Jesus simply came down to show us how to live fully alive? And when we know how to live fully alive, fully in love, we'll have made that shift. Bring heaven into all your relationships. Never forget, we didn't know we weren't in heaven until somebody taught me. See ya Friday.
Please, from this day forward, show people they are still in heaven by the amazing amount of love you give off. Leave the world a better place, and please hit like, subscribe, and share.